I've got several types of gravel in my garden, and I've got this area of Breedon Gravel, which I like very much, but because it's been so wet, it has got very mossy. So I have actually put on a moss killer now, and I find it very difficult to find a moss killer that really works. I've tried so many. I used to use Jay's fluid, but then they had to change the formula, and I find the new one not so effective. But what I do find a lot of people have been using are these lovely rakes, and they change in size. If I can do it, you can alter the actual width of the rake, which I've forgotten how to do now. Oh, like that. And that then alters the raking area. So I have it on right out, and it's a nice springy light rake. And you can also alter the length of the shaft. And although you're not meant to rake Breedon Gravel, I'm finding now, because of the wet and the rain and the increase in amount of moss, that if you actually kill it with a moss killer and then you lightly rake it to get rid of the moss that's dead, I think I need to put a bit more applied moss on it, it does keep it looking a lot better. So this is the technique I'm using now on all my bound gravel here, just to sharpen it up and make it look nicer, and so it doesn't look so scratchy. I love gravel, but when gravel looks scratchy, it looks dreadful. And obviously in the shady areas, such as under the table, you get masses of moss. So I'm going to have to put on more moss killer there and then give it a jolly good rake. But it is actually a really nice job, I think, and not only taking the moss, you obviously take the leaves and things like that off the gravel, which if I left them there, it would just add a load of humus ready for the weeds to germinate in it. And in the Breedon Gravel, I don't like plants germinating in it, but in my other gravel, in my other courtyard, which is something like a 12-metre down angular golden gravel, then I love things germinating. Come and have a look at that. This area with this coarser, loose gravel, which is just confined to sections, I love growing plants in. And to a certain extent, I let them do their own thing. I put in some bearded iris there just to see how they do. The Helleborus tend to take over. They're Helleborus cross sternii. The evergreen, they're wonderful, but you have to keep them in check. The Stipa obviously is a queen, but I've got the Erodium pelargoniferum here, which is a wonderful plant, and I notice that's just starting to set seed in the cracks in the paving. So I'm going to leave those there because I think Erodiums are wonderful plants. I've taken lots of cuttings from it too. And in another garden that we filmed recently, Sophie Allport, she had another Erodium which she inherited, and that is Chrysanthemum Pink. And she kindly let me have a couple of cuttings, and that is now rooted within my greenhouse. And I'm going to put that in here. It's got wonderful white flowers. The Nerines are stars as well. They're beautiful at this time of year. So really with this type of gravel, it's not raking so much as easing out the thugs and maybe planting ones that you really like to take their place. And I like the softness that it contributes to the whole space. It doesn't always look picture perfect. It can look a bit untidy, but I really like that. Now my other type of gravel is my coarser drive gravel, and that's a good 20mm down angular. And I've got plants in that, but mainly they're the more structural plants, so come and have a look at that. So this gravel is much coarser. It's a 20mm down golden angular, and it doesn't get the maintenance it really deserves. We rake it with the rakes on the back of the tractor, mini tractor, every so often, maybe twice a year when someone important's coming. And I generally keep it weed free. I've got things like the hollyhocks growing in it, which I like. I've got the Verbascum polar summer, which most of them are over now, but tall felted grey with a very pale yellow flower. It's a wonderful plant. I do keep an eye out for things seeding in it. I often get Hollies seeding in it. I get evergreen oak seeding in it, all sorts of things. When I see that, I watch it, I dig them out and I plant them somewhere else. So it's quite a useful sort of general germination medium. And I weed it either manually or I put a bit of chemical on it sometimes, depending on what the weather and what the content of weed is. But again, I mean, some places like at Highgrove, they keep the weeds down by just raking it regularly. I think they rake it weekly, but I don't really have the time for that. but it's a good, soft, useful surface that I think works with the stone of the building. So this path is different. This is, it's a bound gravel. I think it came from Smith's in Oxford, and it's been down maybe for 25 years, a long time, and it is looking very messy. So I thought what I was going to do with this is I sprayed it, and I was going to do again the same thing, rake it. I'm letting, although we have got mowing margins in here, of a wooden mowing margin, I'm actually letting the plant seed into the edges. And then I was going to just lay a slightly winding path, following the curve of the path, down the middle, maybe just 3 of these sets wide, just to give it a bit more structure. It just looks a bit all over the place to me. But these are really nice units. They are about 50 mil deep. I think they're about 50 mil wide, and then they're something like 200 mil long. And so I'll butt them up maybe with a sand joint, and I'll just wind this path in the gravel down here, and then I'll take the ivy away. That is becoming too much, and I'll just firm up this path and make it look a bit more interesting. It's a lovely winter job. It won't be a big deal digging it out and just setting those in. Probably take me 2 or 3 days, but it'll be fun, and I think it will just bring this path back into a sort of slightly more cultured look. It just looks too wild and woolly for my liking at the moment. So if you're a big gravel fan like me, it doesn't have to be static. You know, you can change your approach, you can add things to it, you can smarten it up. You need to decide how you want the gravel to look, whether you want it to be smart and formal, or whether you want it to be slightly more woolly and wavy and planted. But it's a fantastic medium for the garden. It looks soft, it seems soft, and it really goes with so many of our building materials, brick, stone, whatever you've got. Whether you've got a castle or a cottage, gravel always seems to look great.